Right, today we'll be starting a long list of topics that involve the laws of Kiruv. Questions that people involved in Kiruv will be commonly asked. We'll take on a couple shilas each week, or a shilah each week, and this might take a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months. I want to try to go through it if that's God willing. Before we begin, as always, this should not be relied upon for halachic psak, and a rav should be consulted. So this learning should be discuss the soldiers in Eretz Yisrael who need protection, the Jews in Eretz Yisrael who need protection, and Esar and Yaakov. So all learning that we should do, we have to learn more, and we have to do all that we can to help those in need. Just a little bit of a background on myself and why I want to talk about this. My name is Avi Zakatinsky, and my father is Rabbi Yehuda Zakatinsky. He's the head of, and my mother, Rabbi Senadina Zakatinsky. They started a Kiruv organization in Queens called Hashivenu. And that organization deals with Baal Teshuva, keeping them religious when they come back from Israel. So I've been exposed to Kiruv pretty much my whole life. So I'm 25 now, but about 6 years ago, I remember that someone told me a story that he was by a certain rabbi's house, a Kiruv rabbi's house, and a lot of people were driving to the meal. So he went over to the rabbi and he asked, "Are you allowed to have guests over on Shabbos that are going to drive to the meal?" And that's a fair question. Is that permitted? So the rabbi didn't know, to be honest. He didn't know. It's a complex shilah, he didn't know. And the rabbi said, "I'm God's salesman, not his policeman." And the person was telling me this because he thought it was such an amazing answer. I didn't like it. That's not a good answer. You are God's policeman too. You have to keep halacha. There's no such thing as doing kiruv is a beautiful thing, but it has to be in the framework of halacha. To break halacha in order to do kiruv is not permitted. So therefore, I spent 2 years, and I wrote a sefer called Mekarev Biyamin, which deals with the most primary questions posed to Kiruv rabbis. And so I feel like this is something close to my heart, so I want to talk about it. So go through some of the shilas, some of the more relevant discussions. So as a bit of an introduction, that was just a little bit about me, now you understand, and just now as a little bit of an introduction. We all know that there's obviously a very big mitzvah to do Kiruv, to bring Jews closer to Kaddish Baruch Hu. It's unnecessary to go through a whole shir discussing the importance. Everyone knows the importance. You're bringing Jews closer to Kaddish Baruch Hu. The Gula can only come until that happens. We all know. However, that being said, and we all know that Avram Avinu, what made him unique as opposed to other rabbis, other great people at the time, Avram Avinu was not the first person that recognized Hashem, but he was the first person who recognized Hashem and spread Hashem's word. He was the first Kiruv rabbi in the history of the world, and that's why he was chosen to be the leader of Klal Yisrael, because that's obviously a unique quality that Klal Yisrael needs to be able to branch out, to help others, to do chesed, not only monetarily, but also to look out for the spiritual well-being of other Jews. That goes without saying. But that being said, one is not allowed, the same way one is not allowed to steal matzah in order to eat the matzah on Pesach, and that's called the mitzvah abba ba'avera. You can't perform the mitzvahs through the facilitation of a sin. To do kiruv without the regard for halacha is also not allowed. You know, I think I mentioned this in Shir once, but I'll mention it again. Rav Avraham Weinfeld in Chuvas Lev Avram, Siman Kuf Nun Aleph, he has a whole arichas about this. He discusses this at length, and he says that he gives a great mashal for people who try to do kiruv without keeping halacha. Meaning, let me explain what that means. If, let's say, someone asks you a question, and let's say it's a machlokas, and the guy's a Baal Teshuva, he's not doing well spiritually, so you want to be lenient, okay, that's fine, that's legitimate. But if someone asks you, he's on the path, I had a case once where a student of my father's was living with a non-Jewish woman. One of the most terrible things a Jew can do. And he got permission from his Kiruv rabbi, because the Kiruv rabbi said it's all part of the process of becoming religious is falling first, or whatever garbage he said. So now this Kiruv rabbi is allowing Jewish men to live with non-Jewish women because he thinks that that'll help in the future of Kiruv, that's not allowed. That's absolutely not allowed. The mashal he gives, or Avram Weinfeld, the mashal he gives, I think is a fantastic mashal, and that is, like I said, you have a person who owns a steakhouse, a very, very fancy steakhouse, and he goes over to his friend and he says, listen, I'm going out of town for a day, can you just manage the store? Okay, he manages the store, he comes back the next day and the place is packed. So he goes over to his friend, the owner goes over to the friend, he said, what'd you do to get the place so packed? So the friend's like, I had a great idea. I saw that steaks weren't selling for $30 each, so I decided I was going to lower the price to $1.99. And then everything was buzzing. So is the owner happy? Because he has business? Of course not. He tells the friend, I asked you to manage it. I didn't ask you to define the prices. I didn't ask you to cheapen the quality of the item. That wasn't up to you. It's not yours. You're not in charge of that. So Rav Avram Weinfeld says it's a similar thing when it comes to Kiruv. Our job is to sell the Torah, right? We're the salesmen, as that rabbi said. We're the salesmen. If people don't want to buy it the way it is, then we can't start cheapening it to start saying, the prices don't matter. Listen, the Torah says this, but it's okay. You don't have to keep this. It's okay to not keep this. It's okay to... You can't do that. We're not in charge. It's not our Torah to play around. We're selling it. We're managing it. It's not ours to cheapen and to break the rules just in order for people to get it. If the people don't want, that's their own problem. And you know what? The Torah is so beautiful, you could sell it in a better way. There are other ways to sell without tampering with halacha. The Chavetz Chaim once gave a mashal of the importance of doing Kiruv, and then we'll start halacha after this, where the Chavetz Chaim said, the mashal is a king, it's a famous mashal, the mashal is a king who comes to a town, and he asks for a cup of water, and the townspeople give him a cup of water, and the water is all black. And it's undrinkable. And he says, I'm not going to drink this. From now on, he makes a proclamation, the only water used in this town must be pure water, drinkable water. Okay. 2 weeks later, he hears that the entire town burned down. He goes over to the mayor of the town, and he says, what happened? So they said, well, there was a fire. And we were going to pour the water on it, but we had to start purifying it, because you said the only water that could be used in this town is purified water. And by the time we were done purifying the water, the town burned down. So what did the king say? So the Chavetz Chaim said, the king said, that's an idiot. Obviously, when you should purify the water. But when the fire is burning, any water will put it out. So the Chavetz Chaim used to say that, yes, in theory, when you're in a perfect world, the people doing Kiruv, they would be purified water. They would be the biggest Rabbanim. But right now, the world is on fire. And when the world's on fire, any type of water, meaning even a person who's not the biggest rabbi, who's not the biggest Talmid Chacham, is a little bit of a more muddied water, so to speak, even he could put out the fire. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, that's true. But if instead of pouring water on the fire, you're pouring lighter fluid on the fire, it's just going to make it worse. Meaning even we have to acknowledge that doing Kiruv is important, and it is fire, and there is a fire in the world, and we got to put it out. That being said, it still has to be done within the groundworks, within the rules of halacha. And that's why I wrote that sefer Mekarvim, and that's what led me to write that sefer, because I thought that there wasn't something in the market, it was in Hebrew, it wasn't something on the market to help those in Kiruv, to help them be able to analyze the complex halachas that they deal with. So I want to go through some of the more complex shilas, some of the more interesting shilas that a Kiruv rabbi will deal with, and you'll see it's not just a Kiruv rabbi, it's anyone who has any involvement or any interaction with someone who's not as observant. I think it could be relevant for everyone. So the thing I want to talk about today is the concept of Baal Teshuva and saying Kaddish. I want to talk about that and different questions that could come up and different understandings to saying Kaddish after they lose a parent. Okay, so we all know that the common custom amongst Klal Yisrael is that when someone loses a loved one, they say Kaddish. They say Kaddish. What's the source for this? The source for this is a medrash. There's a medrash brought down in Zayar. It's brought down by a lot of poskim. I'll speak outside what the medrash is. It's a famous medrash where Rav Akiva was walking on the road, and he sees a man carrying wood running through the forest, and the man is naked and he's black, not as in dark skinned. He looks like he's burnt, like soot. So Rav Akiva goes over to this person and he asks, what's the story? Why are you doing this? Why do you look this way? So the man said to Rav Akiva, I'm not alive. Rav Akiva was obviously accustomed to seeing things that are on a different realm. I'm not alive anymore, and I wasn't religious. I wasn't observant when I was living, and my punishment is, because I did many averos, my punishment is every day I have to chop wood. I have to bring the wood to the angels, and the angels burn me in the wood every day. It's a terrible punishment, but that's what I get every day. So Rav Akiva says to this soul, I guess this neshama, is there anything that we can do for you? Meaning, maybe you heard the angels say like a remedy for your situation. So the soul told Rav Akiva, this is what I've been told. If you can get my son who's not observant to come to shul and to daven for me and to say mishnayos, it'll stop my punishment. So the Gemara says that Rav Akiva went over to the son, explained to him the importance of saying Kaddish, the importance of davening with a minyan, and it says that the son started saying Kaddish, he started davening as a chazan, he started saying mishnayos, and as he was doing this, they took the soul, they stopped punishing the soul, and then eventually they took the soul out of Gehenim, they put him in Gan Eden, and he went up higher and higher. And he went to Rav Akiva and he thanked him. Okay, very interesting medrash. And this is pretty much one of the sources for saying Kaddish, the importance of saying Kaddish for a son. This is also the importance of learning Mishnayos for a neshama. This is also the importance of being chazan. But it's all basically this medrash, that the importance of saying Kaddish. By the way, just parenthetically, it is interesting to note that when Rav Akiva asked the soul, is there anything I could do for you? The soul said, please get my son to say Kaddish. Notice how he could have asked Rav Akiva to say Kaddish. Rav Akiva was the greatest tzaddik of all, at the time. Yet he asked Rav Akiva to get his son, who wasn't observant, to say Kaddish. It goes to show you the importance of a child, of a relative, saying Kaddish for a loved one, more so even than a big rabbi somewhere in Israel saying Kaddish. There's something special and there's something important about the relative saying Kaddish for the lost one. So therefore, the custom has become to say Kaddish for any loved one who passes away, and we say it for 11 months, as we'll discuss today. We don't say it for the 12th month, but that's it. We say it for 11 months. By the way, the reason is, as we'll see from the Ramah says that the Mesorah is that the length of time that a person gets punished in Gehenim is for 12 months, is 11 months, and Risha'im, evil people, get punished for 12 months. Therefore, when you're saying Kaddish for a loved one, you want to stop after 11 months, so to speak, because you don't want to make it seem like they're the Risha'im who go for the 12th month. Meaning the average person only gets punished for 11 months. Only the evil people stay in for the 12th month. So therefore, when you're saying Kaddish for a parent, for a brother, for a sister, you're going to stop after 11 months, because you don't want to go into that 12th month, because the only people that need 12 months of Gehenim are evil people. So you don't want to even imply that your loved one is someone who needs 12 months of Kaddish. You want to assume that after 11 months he already left Gehenim and he goes into Gan Eden. The importance of saying Kaddish. Now, we say Kaddish for all relatives, brothers, sisters, children, parents. But when you say Kaddish for a parent, it's different. When you say Kaddish for a parent, the Paiskim explain, this is from the Radach, the Galyani Ashas talks about this, Ravad Yosef and Chelik Vav Yabia Omer has a whole arichas about this. When you say Kaddish for a parent, you're actually fulfilling the mitzvah of Kivud Avim. Let me explain. We know that we do many things for the deceased. A lot of things that we do, part of the Avelus and bereavement process is not only for us, part of it is for us to get over the loss, but part of it is for the soul. We know that, Moshe Feinstein has a famous Teshuva where they asked Moshe, could you fulfill pay a shiva call? When someone is mourning during the shiva, you're supposed to go and you're supposed to visit and talk to them and make them feel better. A lot of people don't make them feel better, but you're supposed to try to make people feel better. And the question they asked Moshe Feinstein, are you able to pay the shiva call over a telephone? Meaning, I can't make it, can I just call? So Moshe says, really, it's not so good. It's preferred to go there, because he says there are two aspects. There are two things that are happening when you go to the shiva house. First of all, you're making the mourners feel better. Okay, so it's a chesed for the mourners, for those people. But in addition, when you actually enter that house, the person who died is watching, he's aware of what's going on down here, and he sees all the people go to his house, and that makes him feel better. It makes him feel nice, it makes him feel loved that there's so many people coming to his house. So Rav Moshe says, if you call on the telephone, maybe you'll make the mourners feel better, but you're not enhancing like the Shiva house. It's not like the Shiva house is not more busy now. It's just a telephone call. It's not as preferred, because part of the paying Shiva call is actually making the person who's deceased see this, and he feels better that way. He feels a lot better. So there is an aspect, a lot of things that we do is not only for the people that are the mourners. A lot of aspects of mourning and bereavement we actually do for the deceased, for the neshama of the person who died. So Kaddish obviously is for the neshama. As I said from the Medrash, it takes the neshama out of Gehenna, it brings him up to Gan Eden. So obviously it's for the neshama. So every time you're saying a Nebuch, a person loses a child, and he says Kaddish for the child, you're obviously doing a chesed, you're doing a kindness for the child that passed away, because by saying Kaddish, you're helping them. You're elevating their neshama. Fine. But when it comes to saying Kaddish for a parent, it's not just a chesed. Now you fulfill the mitzvah of Kiruv V'Eim. An aspect of Kiruv V'Eim is to honor your parent, to do whatever you can to help your parent. So in the parent's lifetime, the form of Kiruv V'Eim is giving him food, giving him a drink, whatever it is. But when it comes to Kiruv V'Eim after death, the way to fulfill Kiruv V'Eim after death is by saying Kaddish. Helping the soul of your parent after death is a form of saying Kaddish. Interesting, just as a side point, this is just a side point, a lot of things that we do when it comes to mourning, even though it looks the same, it's different than when it comes to the parent as opposed to someone else. Like, Kaddish is the same. You're saying Kaddish for a sister for 11 months, and you're saying Kaddish for the parents for 11 months, but it's different. By the sister, it's a chesed. By the parent, it's Kiruv V'Eim. So Rav Moshe Feinstein actually has a very interesting tshuva, where he asks, why is it that when we say Kaddish for 11 months for all people that pass away, but when it comes to mourning, the laws of mourning, when you lose a parent, you mourn for 11 months, but when you lose a brother, sister, or a child, it's only 30 days. You'll say Kaddish for 11 months, but you only mourn for 30 days. Like there are halachas, you can't go to weddings, all these things. So for a parent, it's 11 months, but for a sibling and for a child, it's only 30 days. So they asked Rav Moshe Feinstein, why is that? So Rav Moshe says, it can't be that it takes 11 months to get over a parent. Meaning, the reason why you mourn for 11 months is because it takes longer to get over a parent than it does to get over a sibling. But that can't be, because when you lose a child, you only mourn for 30 days. And we all know that when Nebuch, we shouldn't know this, but losing a child is more painful than losing a parent. So why is it that you mourn for 11 months for a parent and you only mourn for 30 days for everyone else? So Rav Moshe Feinstein explains that this is also an aspect of Kiruv V'Eim. Kiruv V'Eim dictates that when a parent dies, the world doesn't continue after 30 days. You take 11 months, you spend 11 months to show the parent, as a sign of Kiruv V'Eim, how important that parent was to you. That for 11 months you don't move on. It's a form of Kiruv V'Eim. He actually uses this for halachic ramifications, but that's not for now. But so there are aspects. So saying Kaddish is definitely a fulfillment of Kiruv V'Eim. Okay. So now let's discuss a very interesting shayla that someone came over to me. He came over to me in shul. And the case was, he had a sister who unfortunately married a non-Jewish person. So a lot of halachas are very different because we're very unhappy with intermarriage. It's obviously probably one of the most grave sins a Jew can do. It cuts off the Masorah. The Masorah of Judaism needs a Jew to marry a Jew. Intermarriage, as we saw from a couple parshios ago with Pinchas, intermarriage is not good. So he was saying Kaddish for his sister. His sister had passed away. He was saying Kaddish for his sister. And someone told him, you shouldn't say Kaddish for someone like that. Someone who does the terrible sins in the lifetime, meaning someone who is non-observant. You don't say Kaddish for someone who is non-observant. That's what some rabbi from Lakewood told him. It's not important that it's from Lakewood. It's just that was the story. So he asked me, what's the halacha? So I told him it's absolutely not true. You're absolutely permitted to say Kaddish for someone who is not observant, and the proof is from a Chassam Sofer. There's a halacha that maybe we'll talk about at a different time, and that is that if someone commits suicide It's a terrible, terrible sin. Suicide is considered murder. You killed yourself. Obviously, if someone's mentally unstable, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands, it's nebuch, it's an ones. But for someone to kill himself just because he's not happy with how his life is going is a terrible, terrible sin. There's a Masorah, there's a tradition that someone who commits suicide does not have a chelik in Olam Haba. He doesn't have a share in the world to come. And his soul, I guess, goes in purgatory. So, they asked the Chassam Sofer in Even HaEzer Siman Samach Tes, are you allowed to say Kaddish for someone who commits suicide? So he says like this, these are the words of Chassam Sofer. Omer, I want to say, Mashem Margala B'Pumye, that which people say, it's like a common knowledge, like people talk. People always say, that people say that we don't say Kaddish after someone who committed suicide. This thing that men, women, and children all know this. You don't say Kaddish after someone who commits suicide. I don't believe it's true. I don't think it's true. What this person was in during his lifetime, he didn't follow the ways of Hashem. So now, unfortunately, let's say he's in Gehenna. Maybe, I don't know. It's not important, but let's say. So you're not going to help him out? Well, because he wasn't observant in his lifetime, he doesn't deserve to be saved after his lifetime. On the contrary, think about it. Who was one of the worst Jews in theory to ever live? Avshalom. Avshalom was the son of David HaMelech. He tried to kill David HaMelech. He tried to take over the kingdom. Tried to kill David HaMelech. What does the Gemara say? The Gemara says that after David HaMelech, after Avshalom died, David HaMelech said, Zayin Pamim B'ni Lahalais Mezayin Medayre Gehenim. It says that after Avshalom died, David HaMelech said certain Tehillim 7 times. He said the word B'ni in the Tehillim to bring Avshalom's soul out of Gehenim. Meaning, in essence, what he did was an earlier version of Kaddish. He elevated the soul of Avshalom. Avshalom wasn't a good person, yet he still deserved to be taken out of Gehenna. Every Jew deserves to be saved if they can. And he says, so therefore, the Chassam Sofer says, I completely disagree with that. And that's the halacha, that absolutely you can say Kaddish for someone, no matter what they did in their lifetime. There's nothing a Jew can do in his lifetime that he doesn't deserve to be saved after his lifetime, and therefore Kaddish can save that person, and therefore we're obligated to, you have to say Kaddish for anyone. There's no such a thing that a person, you don't say Kaddish for such a person. There's no such thing. And I want to add, first of all, for a lot of reasons. Says the Chassam Sofer, because such a person, no matter what they did in their lifetime, they deserve and they need help. On the contrary, they need the most help. Some poskim actually say that you should say Kaddish for 12 months for such a person, because real Rishonim go to Gehenna for 12 months. So if you know that the person's a Rasha, you should say it for 12 months. But again, you have to ask a Rav before, because obviously you're playing with fire, as we'll see today. But any person needs Kaddish. But I'll add something from Rav Vadia. Rav Vadia in Chelik Vav of Yerodei of Yabia Omer, Yerodei Sof Siman Lamed Vav, he says, I want to add a reason to say Kaddish for someone who did not live the way a Jew is supposed to live during his lifetime. And he says like this, based on the Rabbeinu Bechai. I mentioned this once before, but I think it's very important. Rabbeinu Bechai says in Parshas Achrei that Kol elu sheshaninu behem ve'elu she'en lahem chelek le'olam haba, all the people that the Gemara says about them, that they don't have a share in the world to come. Meaning the Gemara says that there are certain sins that a Jew commits, that if a Jew commits, he gets cut off, he does not have a share in the world to come, including suicide, including other sins. So one would think that such a person, after he dies, there's no purpose of saying Kaddish, because he's not going anywhere. Is he taken out of Gehenna? Okay, but you're not putting him into Gan Eden because he doesn't have a share in the world to come. Says Rabbeinu Bechai, that's not true. Ein lahem chelik yedua b'fnei atzman. All the people that the Gemara says about, all Jews that the Gemara says they don't have a share in the world to come, what it means is they don't have their own personal share. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu performs tzedakah, and He makes communal areas for those who don't have their own personal share. So therefore, even the people that we think are the worst Jews, that don't have a share in the world to come, they still have a share in the world to come. It means they don't have the personal share, but they have a communal share. And he says from the Rikanti in Parshas Kisisa, B'Shem Rav Azriel, the Rikanti says the following story. He says, "Hey shivli ruach echad shenichnas beisha achas al shavat atzma ladas." A certain dibuk. We know what a dibuk is. That's when a soul goes into I guess an exorcism. That's what they say. It's when a soul goes into a living person. So the Rikanti says that in the name of Rav Israel, that the Rikanti says the following: that one time a soul of a man entered a woman, because this man had committed suicide in his lifetime, and therefore he didn't want to go to the next world because he was afraid of the punishment. So he says, "V'amar," and he didn't want to leave the woman. So the Rikanti says to this person, this soul, as he's about to exercise the soul, he says to him, "What's going to be with you?" So the soul says to him, "I'm going for 12 months in Gehenna, and then I'm going to Gan Eden." So the Rikanti asks him, "I thought it said that if you commit suicide, you don't have a share in the world to come. So how could you go to Gan Eden? I thought you don't have a share in the world to come." And the soul said to him, "This is the most truth. If a soul tells you this, I don't have the original share, the personal share that I was supposed to get. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives me a communal share. He gives me something. He enters me into the world to come. I get something." So therefore, says Rav Ovadia, the importance of saying Kaddish, even for Jews who weren't observant, is because you might think that they weren't observant, and you might think they don't have a share in the world to come, but that's not true. Every Jew has a share in the world to come, and therefore saying Kaddish is important for everyone. There's no such person that you don't say Kaddish for. There's no such thing. So I want to talk about a very interesting shaila today, and that is a shaila that was posed to Rav Yaakov Hillel Shlita, big Mekubal in Eretz Yisrael, in his Teshuvas Vayeshev Hayam, Chelik Aleph Siman Yurches, and that is a very interesting shaila. You have a Baal Teshuva who lost a parent, and he never said Kaddish for the parent. 10 years later, he becomes observant. The question is, and now he learns about the importance of saying Kaddish. He listened to the shir, he sees it's an important thing. He wants to know, can I say Kaddish now? Meaning 10 years later, can I now say Kaddish for the year? Or did I miss it? Very interesting shaila. So let's analyze this for a moment. So Rav Yaakov Hillel says, right off the bat, according to the Ramah, what does the Ramah say in Siman Shin Ayin Vav Saif Sif Dalet? Says the Ramah like this: the custom is that mourners only say Kaddish and are only chazan for 11 months, the 11 months after death, not the 12th month, so that the mourners are not proclaiming to the Jewish people that my parent who died was a Rasha. Why? We have a Kabbalah, we have a Masorah that Rishaim go to Gehenna for 12 months. Regular non-Rishaim, regular Jews go to Gehenna only for 11 months. So therefore, we only say Kaddish for 11 months, because if you say Kaddish for the 12th month, in essence, what you're telling people is, I believe that my loved one who passed away is really a Rasha, and they're really still in Gehenna in the 12th month. So therefore, in order to avoid this concern, again, Rishaim go to Gehenna for 12 months. Non-Rishon only go to Gehenna for 11 months. We only say Kaddish for 11 months because we don't want to make it seem like our loved one is still in Gehenna in the 12th month. Okay. So says Rav Yaakov Hillel, according to the Ramah, if you're not allowed to say Kaddish in the 12th month because you don't want to make it seem like your parent or your brother, sister, whatever is a Rasha, and they still need your help in the 12th month, then how in the world could you say Kaddish 10 years later? How in the world, what does it look like if 10 years later you start saying Kaddish? It looks like, Chas v'Shalom, you're making it seem like your loved one after 10 years still is in Gehenna. Even though it's not true, but it makes it seem that way. How could that be? It's terrible. It's such a terrible thing. So says Rav Yaakov Hillel, you're not, according to the Ramah, you wouldn't be allowed to. Meaning, our Masorah, the Ashkenazi, and even most Svardim, who only say Kaddish for 11 months, that same opinion of only saying Kaddish for 11 months would also tell you can't say Kaddish 10 years later. Because if I can't say Kaddish in the 12th month because it makes it seem like I'm trying to proclaim that my loved one is a Rasha and they still need my help in the 12th month, what does it look like How does it appear when I'm saying Kaddish 10 years later? It makes it appear that 10 years later they still need my help, which is much worse than the 12th month. So if I'm not going to say Kaddish in the 12th month, I definitely cannot say Kaddish years later. And Rav Cook Zatzal, Rav Avram HaKoyen Cook, in Teshuvas Das Koyen Siman Rish Ayin Zayin, was asked a similar question. He was asked by a woman who found out that she lost a loved one. I guess she was very far away. She was in a far distant country, and she found out that her loved one is not alive. So she asked Rav Cook, am I allowed to say Kaddish? She says, I'm not sure. Either I'm in the 10th month or I'm in the 12th month. It's unclear when the person died. So I'm either in the 12th month or the 10th month. I'm not sure. Should I start saying Kaddish now? So Rav Cook said, absolutely not. You're not allowed to say Kaddish. He says the following. Even though it's possible that you're still in the 10th month, but you're what you're trying to do and trying to help them by saying Kaddish, you actually might be hurting them. Because the reason why we don't say Kaddish in the 12th month, because that's the honor of the deceased. Because saying it in the 12th month makes it appear as if you're trying to say that the person's a rasha, an evil person. You're trying to help the father. Again, I said before, saying Kaddish for the father is kiruv. So think about what you're trying to do. You don't know whether it's 11th month or 12th month, right? So you're going to say Kaddish in the 12th month. Why? Because you're trying to honor the father by saying kiruv. But in essence, what you're doing is proclaiming to the whole shul, I believe my father's a rasha. So that little aspect of kivrov that you're trying to accomplish is completely batal. It's completely undermined by the bizayon that you're doing for the father. That in Gan Eden everywhere, the father is like, everyone's talking about the father. He's a Raja. So you're trying to help the deceased, and you're not helping them at all. So therefore, according to the Ramah, the Shaila is not a Shaila. You would not be allowed to say Kaddish after the 11th month. That's it. If years later you realize you didn't say Kaddish, then learn Mishnayos and try to add tzedakah, do whatever you need to do. But to say Kaddish after the 11th month would not be allowed. The question is, though, is there anyone who disagrees? So Rav Yaakov Hillel explains a very fascinating halacha. Rav Yaakov Hillel, just in general, he's a big mekubal, and a lot of times he follows the opinion of the Arizal. Arizal was a big mekubal too. He's the greatest mekubal. So he explains, Rav Yaakov Hillel explains that according to the Arizal, there would be room to say Kaddish, even in this situation. And let me explain where this is coming from. First of all, the Arizal explains that the purpose of saying Kaddish is not only to get the person out of Gehenna. It's not only to stop punishment from the deceased. Because if that was the case, we know that there's no Gehenna on Shabbos. We know that Gehenna is shut down on Shabbos. That's why, that's the Masorah. There's no Gehenna on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. So why do we say Kaddish on Shabbos? So says the Arizal, Shemati Memori Rizal, this is from Rav Chaim Vital in Shara Kavanas Drush Kaddish. Shetoiv Lemer Kaddish Hazal Misas Aviv V'imay Kol Hashana Kula. Afilu b'Shabbos of Yom Tov, we say Kaddish even on Shabbos. Why? L'fi she'ein hatam kavi masha chosh v'nhamoyin am shemoy lahatzil nefesh hameis medina shel Gehenim levad. Because people think the only purpose of saying Kaddish is to stop the punishment in Gehenim. Says the Arizal, that's not true. Because in addition, it's not just the importance of saying Kaddish is not just to stop punishment in Gehenim. It's more than that. It helps bring the soul up to Gan Eden and go higher and higher in Gan Eden. And therefore, there is a purpose of saying Kaddish not only on Shabbos, even though there's no Gehenim on Shabbos, because the purpose of saying Kaddish is not only to prevent him from being punished in Gehenim, the purpose of saying Kaddish is also to elevate their soul in Gan Eden. In addition, the Arizal feels, unlike the Ramah feels that we don't say Kaddish in the 12th month because the 12th month is reserved only for evil people, and if you say Kaddish in the 12th month, it makes it appear as if you're implying that the loved one was not was a rasha and still needs help in the 12th month. The Arizal disagrees. The Arizal in Shara Kavanis, the Rav Chaim Vital in Shara Kavanis says from the Arizal these words: Nil leni asdaiti sheshamati. Memori Zal, I heard from the Arizal, Shetoiv leimer hakadish al zamisazav v'imay kol hashana. It is important to say Kaddish for the entire year. And the Sefer Shalmei Tzibur brings down from the Arizal the following in Daf Kuf Tzadi in the Hagah. Mitam zeh shel yesh li yasam lemer Kaddish kol yud beis chodesh. Important, according to the Arizal, you should say Kaddish all 12 months. Udeloi kamoisha kasav maram, and not like the Ramah. The Ramah says you don't say Kaddish in the 12th month because the only people who need Kaddish in the 12th month are evil people, and if you say Kaddish in the 12th month, it's very bad. It implies that the soul is still in Gehenna. The Arizal disagreed. He says the following. Because again, according to the Arizal, the purpose of saying Kaddish is not only to take them out of Gehenna, it's also to elevate them. So in the 12th month, yeah, they're taken out of Gehenna, but you can elevate the soul too. So according to the Arizal, there's no problem of saying Kaddish in the 12th month. And in addition, this is the biggest chiddush. Now, by the way, obviously, you always have to ask a Rav. I believe that the overwhelming majority of people do not say Kaddish in the 12th month. And I think just hearing that the Arizal said it is not enough, because it's understood that saying in the 12th month is a very bad thing, because we accept the opinion of the Ramah, and therefore if a person wants to say Kaddish in the 12th month, I don't believe they should, but if you want to, you have to speak to a very big rabbi, because I believe the overwhelming majority disagrees with the Arizal, but that was the Arizal's opinion. And the third is a very fascinating ruling of the Arizal, and that is the following. We know that the assumption is Mishpar Rishon b'Gehenim Yud Beis Chodesh, which means that a Rasha stays in Gehenna for 12 months. What does that mean? The basic understanding, according to the Ramah, is that a person dies on Rosh Hashanah, so he goes instantly to Gehenna for 11 months. Then the 12th month, if he's a Rasha, he'll stay. If he's not a Rasha, he'll leave. And then boom, by the next year, Rosh Hashanah, he's already in Gan Eden. That's the accepted assumption. The Arizal did not feel that way. The Arizal felt that Gehenna is a privilege. Meaning everyone looks at Gehenna as a bad thing. It's a punishment. No one wants punishment. The Arizal understood that Gehenna is a privilege. Gehenna means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you the opportunity to be punished in order to receive atonement, and then you can enter Gan Eden. It's a very big zechus, as they say. It's a very, you're lucky. Just to have HaKadosh Baruch Hu punish you and give you the opportunity to become closer to Him in Gan Eden is a privilege. And therefore, I just, as I mentioned, the Nesiv Shalom explains that the greatest punishment for the Jews, for those who lived in the time of the Mabul, during the times of Noach and the Mabul, he explains that the punishment that the people got during the times of the Mabul was way worse than the punishment by Sodom. Why? Because he says, by Sodom, they got killed. Sodom, the whole world, the whole city got destroyed in a very supernatural way. There were open miracles happening during the destruction. So, at least as they were being killed, they got to see that Hashem Himself is taking the time to punish me. That itself makes you feel good. As opposed to the people of the Mabul, they got killed through springs. They got killed through levees breaking. And I'm sure there were meteorologists at the time explaining, how this is happening. Meaning they got killed not necessarily... They didn't necessarily see the Yad of Hashem as it was happening. It looked like they just got killed normally. Sometimes it's a merit to be punished by Hashem is itself a merit, because it means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taking the time, He's taking the interest, and He wants you to get better. If Hashem didn't care about you, we know one of the punishment of the snake, the Nachash HaKadmon, the original snake who ensnared Adam and Chava, is that his dust, all his food tastes like dust, and he has abundant amount of food. Snakes don't have a problem eating. So the question that a lot of Mefarshim ask is that why is that a punishment? That's a gift. Imagine not having to work for your food. Imagine not having parnasa issues. So the Mefarshim explain, no, it's like a father who gives his son $1,000 and says, I don't want to see you ever again. That's a big slap in the face. The father would rather give $1 each day, and then each day the son has to come to the father and say, can I have another dollar? Can I have another dollar? Because that way the relationship will always be close. the worst thing a father can do to a child is push him away. So what Hashem did to the Nachash was not a bracha, it was a big klala. It's saying, here, you have all the food you need, I don't want to see you again. So the Arizal explains, going back to our discussion, the punishment that a Jew gets in Gehenna is a big schus. It's like people should be knocking down the door to get into Gehenna, because it means that after 11 or 12 months you're into Gan Eden. That's a big schus. And the Arizal says not everyone is zoche to get it right away. Listen to the words of the Arizal. This is the Sefer Nishmas Chaim. This is from Reb Chaim Vital in Shara Gegulim Hakdama Perek Chav Beis. L'pa'amim, there are times yelchu b'gilgulim hahem esrim shana. Many times the soul will be stuck in purgatory, or it won't be ready to go to Gehenna for 20 years, or 100 years, or 1,000 years. A lot of times it'll take time to even get into Gehenna. And these are the words of the Sefer Nefesh Nishmas Chaim in Maimer Revi'i Perek Yutes. Real evil people like Jewish people that like Jesus and these type of evil people, they don't go to Gehenna right away. They're not worthy of going to Gehenna right away. And all the Jews that killed people, all these people, they don't go to Gehenna right away. Because Gehenna is a cleansing. It's a big schus. It means that you're getting cleaned and then you're worthy to go to Gan Eden. So not everyone gets that right away. Therefore, what these souls get is purgatory. They just go from this realm to the next realm without any menucha, any peace. Sometimes they come down as rocks and trees and all these things. Sometimes they'll come down as animals. And eventually they'll go, they'll get into Gehenna, and then they go out. They go in for 12 months and then they leave. And he says, think about it. Because how could it be that a Jewish person who killed thousands of people, let's say, will go to the same amount of Gehenna as you and I? It doesn't make sense. It can't be. It can't be that Jesus and all these people, that terrible Jews that did terrible things, would go to Gan Eden 12 months later. It can't be that they go to Gehenna the same amount of time I go to Gehenna. It doesn't make sense. So therefore says this Nishmas Chaim. What it means is that Gehenna, you go to Gehenna for 12 months. What it means is the amount of time a person can go to Gehenna is 12 months. When those 12 months start, that's up to the person. That's up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the opinion of the Arizal. So therefore, now we have a new understanding. What happened with this person? This person wasn't religious. He died. His children weren't observant. They didn't say Kaddish for him. 10 years later, they want to say Kaddish. So according to the Harizal, it makes a lot of sense to say Kaddish 10 years later. Because maybe those 10 years, maybe the person is going to Gan Eden, going to Gehenna 10 years later. We don't know when the 12 months start of Gehenna. Maybe it's starting 10 years later. Now generally, we don't know, therefore we assume it starts right away, and we say Kaddish right away. That's the Zman of saying Kaddish for the first 11 months. 12 months according to the Arizal. But according to the Arizal, saying Kaddish 10 years later could be very beneficial to get the guy out of Gehenna. You're going to ask me, how are they going to get in Gehenna 10 years later? Because the answer is, you only stay in Gehenna for 12 months. But when those 12 months start is dependent on each person. Each person is different. Therefore, according to the Arizal, it makes a lot of sense to say Kaddish 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later, to start saying Kaddish then if you didn't say it before, because maybe they're going into Gehenna 10 years later. We don't know. So just to summarize the opinions, if a person didn't say Kaddish, we say Kaddish for 11 months. You don't say Kaddish in the 12th month according to the Ramah, because it appears as if you're implying that the person that you're saying Kaddish for is a Rasha. And according to the Ramah, and that's the overwhelming majority of opinions, you would not say Kaddish 10 years later, Chas v'Shalom, because that implies that they're still in Gehenna 10 years later, which is obviously a very, very detrimental thing. And that's the opinion of Rav Kook. That's the opinion of the Shayil and Teshuva Shos Yaakov, Chelik Beisim, and Lamed Tes. I'm sorry, that's the opinion of the Shos Yaakov, and Chelik Beisim, and Lamed Tes. And Rav Yaakov Hillel, however, Rav Yaakov Hillel, also by the way, the Teshuva is Didoy Sadeh. Let me explain one more time. According to Rav Yaakov Hillel, according to the Arizal, you can say Kaddish 10 years later. Because again, maybe that's when they're starting Gehenna. That's also the opinion of the Shayil, Rav Yitzchak Valach, in Teshuva Shos Yaakov, Chelik Beisim, and Lamed Tes. And the Teshuva She'er Simcha also brings down such an opinion. However, we brought down from the Ramah that you're not allowed to say Kaddish in the 12th month because it implies that the person is still a Rasha. Then Chas v'Shalom, you can't say Kaddish 10 years later. And that's also the opinion of Rav Kook. And I also saw in the Chuvas Dudoy Asada, Simin Membeis, that he says, Yuchal la'ir l'mayla Chas v'Shalom ha'aviv loimer mistama kivin shem Kaddish yamechad yoysim yishal avelos har machzik l'Rasha. Says the Dudoy Asada, saying Kaddish a day extra, a day into the 12th month, is not just, why do we assume it's a bad thing to say Kaddish in the 12th month or 10 years later? The assumption is because, you're implying that the father's a Rasha, and it's like bad, it's like you're giving him a bad name. So Dudaya says it's even worse than that. In Shemayim, they look at the person, they look at the father, and Hashem says to the father, I thought you were a good guy, but apparently down on earth, they're still saying Kaddish for you, meaning they're implying you're a Rasha. Maybe you are a Rasha. Let's open up the books again. You're bringing another judgment on the father because you're sort of telling Hashem, I believe my father's a Rasha, so Hashem's like, well, maybe he's onto something, and we have to look into it. And therefore, the overwhelming majority of opinions are a rule that you don't say Kaddish in this scenario, you don't say Kaddish a day extra over the 11 months, not in the 12th month, and Chas v'Shalom not 10 years later. Again, there seems to be the opinions that disagree. For normative halacha, you cannot do this without asking a shaila. Anytime you're playing with Kabbalistic stuff, a shaila needs to be a Rav needs to be consulted. Bez Hashem, next time we'll continue with different shailas that are relevant to Kiruv. All questions could be sent to avizakutinsky@gmail.com. That's AVIZAKUTINSKY @gmail.com.